This podcast is made possible in part by Patreon support, and I'd like to say thank you to our newest patron, Jorg Kolberg. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. I apologize if I didn't, but again, thank you so much for your support. I really do appreciate the wonderful message you sent me as well. And for you, the listener, if you would like to join the Patreon and be a supporter of this show and make sure that I can keep bringing you more content like this, then head on over to JapanKyo.com/Patreon and sign up for as little as $1 a month.
Haven't you heard not to trust talking turtles? We have signs up all over the village.
Be gone, you kids. I cannot read. Welcome to Ichimon Japan. I'm Tony.
And I'm Ryan.
And
don't trust turtles.
Don't trust turtles. That's the theme of today's episode. But I was going to say, a long time ago, we started this podcast to answer silly questions about Japan because Ichimon means one question. And today's question means, today's question is...
It can mean something too.
What does this question mean? Let's talk about it.
Can a question mean a question?
It's like, what? Well, it's like to be or not to be. That is the question. What does that mean, right? Like we can discuss that
next time.
But next time, next time when we talk about Shakespeare. So today's
the Japanese version.
Japanese. Oh my God, train wreck here. So today's question is: what is the lesson of Urashima Taro? Okay, so this
question presupposes there is a lesson.
It does, yeah. It's a very leading question. So this is part 3 in our deconstructing Japanese fairy tales or folk tales trilogy. Part 1 was Momotaro, and part 2 was Kaguya Hime, Bamboo Princess, whatever you want to call it. They're not. You don't have to listen to the other ones to understand this one. But if you do like.
Should.
You definitely should. Yeah. I mean, I loved researching those and learning about those. And I think there's some good info there, in between the silly jokes.
I just loved your introduction to part 3 of our series. You don't need to listen to part 1 and 2 though.
Yeah. It's totally, yeah. I mean, but
honestly, part 2 sucked. You should skip it.
No, in part 2, it's a fun one with the princess. But no. If you enjoy our take on this whole folktale kind of thing, then you'll enjoy the other ones for sure. But they're not directly connected. So today we are going to be talking about another one of Japan's most famous fairy tales, folk tales, whatever you want to call it, Urashima Taro. And this is definitely one of the oldest ones. It's also one of the most confusing ones because it's kind of difficult to, I would say it's impossible to figure out what the point of this story is because I just don't know. I don't think it's possible to figure out what exactly the point is because it's such an old story and we don't really know exactly where it came from, but there's some evidence that suggests some stuff which we will discuss. But first, let's talk about the story itself. We'll do a quick summary because maybe there's one or two people that don't remember it or don't know it. So I'll just run through it really quickly. It's a super simple story. So Urashima Taro is this guy. Usually he's described as a pretty young guy. I would assume either teens or 20s. And he's usually described as a fisherman. And the more modern interpretations usually say he was out one day and he sees some kids harassing a turtle.
As kids do. Just get that turtle.
Hey, if you get flipped, I bet you can't get right side up again. They're trying to tease it about things that it's self-conscious about. So
minor spoilers. Maybe it's a cyclical story, and the end is he realizes why they were bullying the turtle.
What do you mean?
Well, because what the turtle. Well, I guess the turtle doesn't directly do it at the end.
Yeah, it kind of does, but we'll get into that later. So, spoiler: the turtle might have actually secretly been a princess. Woo! But anyway, so in this modern version, which is the one that if you look up on YouTube, usually or Japanese storybooks nowadays, this is usually how it's presented. Kids are harassing the turtle. Urashima Taro goes over there and rescues the turtle. I don't know what he does to the kids. But the
I
turtle
want to
says
imagine
like,
it was turtle tipping, like cow tipping.
yeah, it's like, hey, you kids, get out of here. And then he flips the turtle back over, and the turtle's like, thank you. Come with me. I'm gonna take you to this super cool place. You should get on my back. And this
We'll be there in
guy,
10 days because I'm a turtle.
yeah, in some versions, there's a 10-day trip in some versions, but in
Is
the
it really?
again,
I just
there
figured
is,
it'd be
there is.
slow.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
In older versions, in really old versions, there's a version where he gets on a boat for like 10 days, but we'll get back to that.
Yeah, I always just heard like he gets on the turtle and then he arrives, like with no real mention of it.
Basically, yeah, it's almost like instant from the way that the story is told. But yeah, he gets on the back of the turtle. Some versions say that he explicitly gets gills so that he can breathe underwater on the trip down to Ryugujo, which is sometimes translated as the Dragon Palace. But it's this underwater kingdom ruled by a woman, but also there's like squids dancing and stuff. So I
He
don't
never
know.
actually meets a dragon if there isn't, right?
Not in the more typical versions that I've seen. Yeah. So he goes down there, and it's a wonderful paradise. Like it's there's some descriptions that say like there's 4 quadrants of this Ryugujo palace, and like each one is a different season, and they're drinking sake and eating wonderful food. And Urashima Taro is having a wonderful time with Otohime, which is this princess that I referred to earlier. I guess like this beautiful underwater princess that is entertaining him. And so 3 years pass. I think that's the usual interpretation or telling in the modern versions. 3 years pass, some time passes, and then Urashima Taro, he either goes outright to the princess and says like, hey, I'd like to go visit my parents or my brother, or I'm feeling kind of homesick. Some versions, Otohime notices that he's kind of down in the dumps, he's feeling kind of blue, and then she's like, what's up, like I thought you were having a good time. And then he says, actually I miss my whatever and I want to go home, I want to go visit them.
Just
So
imagine you went to like visit your friend's house and they kept you there for 3 years.
yeah, but they kept like giving you all the food you wanted, everything you ever wanted. They just keep giving it to you, and at first, it seems like, oh man, this is awesome. But eventually, you're like, I want to
For the
like
first
do
two and a
something
half
else.
years, it's cool. But after
Yeah,
that,
yeah. So Urashima Taro, he wants to go home and visit, but I think in every version that I've seen where this kind of exchange happens, it's either explicitly stated or implied that he will eventually come back, or that he still wants to come back. He still wants to see Otohime again, but he just wants to go visit his home. So then she says, sure, okay, we'll take you back, but here's this box. In Japanese, it's called the tamate bako. And she like pulls it out of somewhere. I don't know where, maybe out of her sleeve or something. And she gives it to him, and it's described as a jeweled box. And she says, here's a box, take it with you. If you ever want to see me again, do not open it once you're back. That's in some versions. Sometimes she says, here's a box, don't open it. And she doesn't really say much more. And in some super, super short versions, I've seen like, here's a box, that's it.
here's a box.
Okay, go home.
Thank you.
So again, so many versions. This is probably like at least a 1,500-year-old story, if not even much, much older than that.
So there's at least 3 versions.
At least, yeah. So then Urashima Taro, he gets back. Maybe the turtle takes him back. I don't know. Depends on the version. And he's walking around, and he doesn't see like people that he recognizes. He doesn't find his parents or his brother or whatever it is that he's looking for in that specific version. Then he finds some person on the street or whatever, like the seashore or wherever he is, and he says like, "Hey, yo, so I'm looking for the Urashimas, and I can't find them. And my name is Urashima Taro. What's up? Like, where's everybody?" And then
exactly those words.
Yeah. He's like, "Hey, yo, yeah." And then the guy,
yo, walk in here. You see Urashimas?
yeah. And the person he talks to says, "No, I don't know what you're talking about, but I have this vague recollection of somebody, I think with your name, having disappeared. And here we get a discrepancy in what, depending on the version, 300 years ago or 700 years ago. They just mysteriously disappeared, this Urashima person, and I can't find them. So
And I remember this vaguely because I was also here 700 years ago.
yeah, exactly. That's the question that I always ask here. It's like, so even if this guy, which, he didn't live for 300 years, 700 years, whatever, this person that Urashima Taro encounters, like, would Urashima Taro, who was not like some sort of nobility, like, nobody would remember this guy. Like we're talking, the story is, at least like before the year 1000. Like, this doesn't make any sense. People would go they would disappear in the ocean, like this guy was a fisherman, like he would die in the ocean. This wasn't anything all that strange
Yeah,
to
he had
disappear.
already died in the ocean like 4 times before this happened.
Well, that's what people would just assume. It's like, oh, poor Taro, he just disappeared. He was fishing, and then
not that people died in the ocean. Specifically, Urashima Taro died in the ocean. People
well, imagine this. So let's just say that Urashima Taro like is walking around the seashore. He saves this turtle. The turtle talks to him, and some person off in the distance is looking at Urashima Taro like talking to this turtle, but he can't hear the turtle talking because he's too far away. So then the turtle like tells him, "Hop on my back." Urashima hops on the back. They dive in the ocean. This person like that was watching this happen was like, "Oh my god, what just happened?"
He just drowned himself by a turtle.
He just sat on a turtle and went under the ocean.
The 3rd time this week, and then they put up a "Beware of Turtle" sign.
Yeah, a sign that says "Don't talk to strange turtles."
There's like a little picture of like turtles you can trust, turtles you cannot trust.
Yeah. The ones that don't talk, they're okay. The ones that talk, do not get on their back. So maybe that's what
turtles
happened.
Are always scheming.
Maybe that's what happened, and why his Urashima's story like survived for 700 years, because this weirdo like jumped on a turtle and went in the ocean. But anyway, so then Urashima is like all in despair. He's like, "Oh no, my family's gone. My brother's gone. It's been 700 years, 300 years. Nobody I know is here." And
I guess none of his family had heirs because they're all just gone.
I guess again, this story is full of holes. And then Urashima Taro, in a lot of the versions that I've read, especially the modern versions, it just says in his despair he forgets that he was told not to open the box. So of course he opens the box. And this is pretty universal. I mean, he opens the box, and then usually it's described as a puff of white smoke or something comes out. And then in an instant, he ages into, an old man. His hair turns white. His beard, like, all of a sudden grows, and it's a white beard. And then often he ends up dying, or the story just suddenly ends after that with nothing else. But a lot of times he does die after that. And that's where a lot of the modern interpretations just end. There's no sort of like, and that's why you don't trust strange underwater women, or like, I don't know, like there's nothing that says, like some sort of epilogue, like something that gives the story meaning, right? So
not just turtles. I mean, it's very clear.
That's the only conclusion that I think I can come up with. And I will briefly say here that I tweeted in Japanese, and I just said like to my Japanese followers, like, hey, is anybody like, can anybody tell me like what the moral of Urashima Taro is? And one person, a Japanese person, responded and said, like, don't trust suspicious turtles. Don't follow suspicious turtles. That's what they said in Japanese. And I think we're both in agreement here. Yeah. Do not like follow turtles into the ocean.
Really, man, those talking turtles, why are they talking? It's just that's suspicious.
Exactly. Yeah. So, like that's because usually like I don't know, what's a really easy to understand story that has a very clear moral.
Pinocchio, don't lie or your nose gets big.
Yeah, that's thank you. Yeah, Pinocchio, don't lie, your nose gets big. Like, it's very easy to understand, right? Like, the Pinocchio
also,
lies.
Eat your dad.
Yeah. That's a little extra, but there's a overarching kind of arc there that supports that moral. Like Pinocchio lies, nose grows, bad stuff happens, redemption at the end. But with Urashima Taro, it doesn't really all mesh together. And really the crux that is super, super confusing here, to me at least, is that in no version of the story does Urashima Taro get some sort of explanation from Otohime, the princess, that why he shouldn't open the box, right? Because if you get that explanation, then you can kind of justify the whole story, and it goes like if Otohime says like, here's a box, don't open it, this is why, because actually you've been underwater for 700 years in normal time and your soul is in here, so you can go back and you can spend some time on land, but if you open this, then you're going to go back to mortal time and you're going to die, so keep this, don't do it, blah blah blah. And then he does it, and then the moral of the story would be like, follow what people says. If somebody tells you to do something, do it. But because there's no explanation, then the whole story, in my opinion, falls apart.
But if the story is follow what people say, he should have joined in on beating up on the turtle.
Because the kids were saying, let's beat up on the turtle?
Yes, definitely. They were probably like, dude, this turtle killed my uncle by making him 700 years old. We're trying to get revenge.
That is very true. We don't know. Yeah, that is so true. Maybe that turtle like took away like some ancestor from 300 years before, and now it was back to like abduct somebody else. I was going to abduct somebody else, and the kids were like, "No, you're not going to do this again." Our great grandpa told us about this story about the suspicious turtle.
We must stop the evil turtle. Like,
and then
Taro, you don't understand. That turtle's evil.
Yeah, and then Tano's like, no, it's a turtle, and I'm going to follow it into the ocean.
Haven't you heard not to trust talking turtles? We have signs up all over the village.
Be gone, you kids. I cannot read. So, I think we just cracked the story, huh? All right.
It's investigate the situation before you intervene, because it turns out the kids bullying the turtle were the heroes.
Yeah. Ask the kids like, all right, guys, how about we take a break? Let's talk about this. Let's wrap. All right. Like, why are you beating up this turtle? And then they go, oh, okay. Let's beat up the turtle, guys.
Let's get them together.
Yeah. Okay. So of course the question that I think, many people would have is like, okay, so maybe this is some sort of, patched together version of the story, and maybe the original version of the story actually has something to tell us. The reality is we don't know what the heck the original version of the story is, because it was an oral tale, for probably maybe even hundreds of years, way before anybody ever wrote it down. But when was it?
It was actually only an oral tale for about a year, and then it followed a turtle into the ocean, and when it came back, it was hundreds of years old.
This freaking turtle, man, it's everywhere. So I found a very interesting thesis. It's like 170 pages. I read this thing, very interesting, but also there's so much information here that I can't cover it all. I will include a link to this because it is a really, really interesting just analysis of the evolution of the story and the history of the story and what we know. It's by, let me see, I think her name is Yoshiko Holmes, and this is from 2014, and it's from the Victoria University of Wellington. And again, I'll include the link, but it's a really, really good look at this whole like historical timeline of all these different types of the story, and they're classified in different ways, and different aspects of the story emerged in different time periods in Japan, blah, blah, blah. But Ryan, can you read, this is from the conclusion of this thesis that just, it'll say kind of what Yoshiko Holmes concludes about how old this story might be, or at least given what we know.
Before the Urashima story was recorded as text, the putative Urashima story was believed to have been a well-known oral tale among the Ama group of coastal dwellers in Japan, who are surmised to have originated around Lake Dongting in northeastern Hunan province of China in prehistoric times.
So,
there's more, but
but basically if you look up what the oldest Urashima Taro version is, usually you get Nara period. So we're talking like 700s roughly. There's a couple of particularly well-known texts that are often cited, but the names aren't really all that important. What this is saying is that there's probably at least the first written version probably emerged in the Asuka period, which is around 500s to 600s, but it seems like it may have come by way of this Ama people, which go back to the prehistoric times in China. So it's very likely that this story, or at least some, whatever ended up turning into this story, maybe it was even, because we just don't know. Maybe it was like 2 or 3 versions like meshed together that ended up getting written down. There's no way to know, but some origin of this story might go back to China in prehistoric times. But that's just kind of the
That's kind
best.
of what made me pause. Is like, just because that group of people are from China doesn't mean they had the story then, and she seems to be
Exactly.
implying that.
Maybe, but we just don't know. Like, that's one possibility, but I mean, it is true that there's tons of influence that, from China,
I feel like
some
it's similar to saying like all humans originally came from Africa, therefore the story is also from Africa.
yeah. So I'm not saying that it came from China, but I'm saying that is one possibility. But what we know for sure is that it was like there before the 700s, before the written record, right? It wasn't that was the first time that whatever this Urashima, whatever it's called at the time, was told. There was something before then, and it probably was there already in the 500s, and it may have been there even longer. And we don't know what that original thing was, and we will almost certainly never know because it's just so old and it wasn't written down at the time.
It was
But
way better, man. It was like an SF story. They went into space. There was like star destroyers and all kinds
yeah.
of crazy stuff.
Well,
Interdimensional travel.
it crossed over with Kaguya Hime because she's from outer space as well.
Yeah. She actually comes to fight the evil Otohime at the end.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so this is a random thought that I had while I was thinking about all this stuff. But like Disney princesses are like, always like super nice and whatever. But these like Japanese folktale princesses are like, they're just kind of like confusing. It's
Kaguya
like,
is generally nice, right? Her whole thing was just like, leave me alone. I just want to hang out with my family.
yeah. Well, she's like, leave me alone, leave me alone, leave me alone. And then she goes with her people, and then she goes all like heartless again, and because they make her
Yeah,
drink
I
that
always got the
liquor.
feeling she didn't want to do that.
Yeah, she didn't, and then she did. But they kind of like, peer pressured her, I guess.
She knew what kind of horrible crap these like weird other dimensional royalty dragon people would do to her if she didn't drink their evil potion.
True, yeah. But okay, so the point is that this is a really old story, and that different periods add in different aspects to the story. So in the very, very early versions, one thing that we see is that the turtle is the princess. So it's one of these like animal human marriage stories that we see occasionally in Japanese folktales. Not even occasionally, like it's kind of a common trope.
And they
Uh,
always work out so well.
I know, yeah, they all work out like horribly at the end. So the story, that the one version is that Urashima Taro, he's a fisherman. I think he catches a turtle, but then he lets it go, and then the turtle turns into a woman, or it goes away and then comes back as a woman. And then um, in the version that she comes back as a woman, he doesn't find out that she was actually a turtle until towards the end of the story. But in the versions that she turns into the woman right away, then he's just like, oh, who are you? You're such a beautiful woman, and you're on my boat here. Like, what do you want to do? And then the woman's like, hey, I'm all lonely. Why don't you come over to this place that
Netflix
I
and
want
chill
to?
in my palace.
Yeah. Like, come with me, take me to my place. And they go on this boat for like 10 days. And I guess they're like chatting it up in those 10 days. And then in these older versions too, like the palace isn't necessarily under the sea. Sometimes it's an island. Sometimes it seems like it's on a mountain or something. I don't know. But the undersea trope doesn't come until later, it seems. But anyway, they go down into this palace or mountain or island, and in these older versions, there's a little bit more of an emphasis on like immortality, and they're drinking like these elixirs, and these they're partying with the gods, and there's allusions to like immortality in various like symbolic sort of ways. But it basically, you know, ends in more or less the same way. But the symbolism seems to be kind of pushing these ideas of immortality. And like I said, in some versions, she then later reveals, actually, I was a turtle all along. And then I think in the Muromachi period, if I remember correctly, there's versions that at the end, Urashima Taro ends up becoming a crane. So he opens the box, turns into this old man, and then morphs into a crane, and then flies away, and then gets reunited with the princess, which was actually a turtle all along. And then the crane,
so like
and
her true form's a turtle.
Yeah. That exactly. She was just disguised as a beautiful woman. And
so the Dragon King has a turtle daughter.
There's probably, see, that's the thing. Like and that's why if you're super interested in this, go read this thesis. But it's really hard to keep track of like at what point Ryugujo comes into the picture. Was that before or after the crane thing started becoming common? So I'm not sure about all that, you know, where all these things kind of intersect. But the ending in this one version in the Muromachi period is like they both fly off to, I think, this like symbolic like Mount Horai or something that is like important in mythology, and they're basically like become these like deities of immortality. So I guess the story, you know, after the fact, after the story was already around for hundreds of years, they try to interpret it in this way where it's an explanation of these deities of the crane and the turtle, which are both symbols of, you know, immortality, long life. They try to use this as this kind of origin story for these deities, or kind of mythical figures or something like that. So, but the problem is that was something added later into the story, and it, as far as I can tell, wasn't in the older versions of the story. So again, this is like you're trying to shoehorn something into the story that wasn't already there. So there's I can't pinpoint to any sort of clarity of like what exactly the moral of the story is, because there doesn't really seem to be a clear moral.
It's very clear. Don't trust turtles and don't open boxes. And especially don't open turtle boxes.
Yeah. Look, if a girl that smells like a turtle gives you a box, do not open that box.
So any box, they try to trick you.
Yeah. Again, we're going back to this whole motif of the animal secretly being an animal, but it's a woman that says like, hey, I'm a woman, I'm not an animal, and do this or else I'm gonna punish you, but she doesn't actually say she's gonna punish you. There's the crane of the story of the,
is that going to be our next episode then? Maybe we should keep that one a secret in case.
Oh, well, no, I mean, I'll just say it really quickly, but it's Tsuru no Ongaishi, I think is what it's called. But
yeah, that's what it's called.
Yeah, there's a guy marries a woman that is secretly a crane, and she says, don't do a certain something. And he does it.
He does that thing.
And then he loses the wife. I think she flies away or something because she's secretly a crane.
I don't know if it's not an animal, but Yuki Onna does the same. Wife warns him not to do something.
Yeah, there's
I feel like that one's bullcrap, though, because he only tells her. He doesn't tell anyone else.
Oh, true. Yeah. So yeah, but there's like the yokai angle too, right? There's the foxes and all that too. So.
Yeah, because I know that like tanuki and kitsune are heavily implied to like have overlap with yokai, but maybe just like all animals were considered kind of yokai back then.
Yeah.
Because crane also, I guess, yeah.
In a way, yeah. And that line between yokai and what's not a yokai, like that's always such a vague one, but. Anyway, let's take a break here, and we'll be back with a couple other things, including a modern urban legend version of Urashima Taro. Hey, Tony here. Just a quick commercial break. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button for Ichimon Japan if you're enjoying these episodes. Well, hey, you're in luck because we have more episodes coming. So they tend to come out on the 21st of the month. That's the schedule that we've been on for many months now, actually. And I've been able to keep that going. And I plan to keep going with that. So hit the subscribe button and you won't miss any future episodes. By the way, I also do another episode called Japan Station. And in that one, I talk to interesting people who have some connection to Japan. I've talked to all kinds of people. We've done over 100 episodes. So there's tons of content for you to listen to in case you just came across this show. You just discovered what I'm doing. Hey, good luck. There's tons of content for you to listen to. So hit the subscribe button for that. If you're listening on YouTube, thank you. You can hit the subscribe button for the channel too. I would appreciate that as well. So thank you. And let's get back to the show. Okay, so here's a random little fact for you, but there's a fish that has a name connected to the story of Urashima Taro, and that is
The
Ryan.
Japanese name or the English name?
Go either way.
Ryugu no Tsukai is the Japanese name.
Yeah, which is
The
the
giant
servant.
oarfish. Yeah.
Yes, the Ryugu no Tsukai literally would be like the servant of Ryugu, which is a reference to Ryugu Jo, the underwater dragon sea palace that we're talking about with Urashima Taro. So yeah, these are these deep sea oarfish, right? That
So apparently it's pretty deep down there.
yeah, they go pretty far down there. So I guess because they're so deep, that's why they got that name, because they're so deep, and Ryugu is at the bottom of the ocean. So that, I mean, I guess that's the connection. So they
really should update the story where he saves an oarfish instead of a turtle.
I know, right? Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. Yeah, it's like he hitched a ride with an oarfish, but those things are pretty ugly, right? So
that's rude.
Then the oarfish turned into a beautiful woman, but it still smelled like an oarfish. All right, so there's, like I said, there's tons of interpretations, and they all from different time periods, and it's all a big old mishmash. And I think in the Meiji period is really when we start to get the modern interpretation, because from what I read, that is when it starts to show up in the formalized like education system in textbooks. And so I think that's around when they try to start to like shoehorn some actual moral in there. And part of that comes from I'm saying that in reference to like the kids teasing or harassing the turtle, right? Like before often it was like he just fishes and he comes across a turtle, or it's not like Urashima Taro was like this specifically good person that saves the turtle. He just like stumbles across the turtle, fishes it, lets it go. Having those kids there is like this attempt to give it a moral, but again, it doesn't really. It's not clear.
He was a fisherman. Maybe he was trying to eat that turtle, and that's why he was fighting the kids for it.
And then he left his knife at home, so he's like, I'm gonna go home and I'll come and get something. And then the turtle's like, wait, I'm gonna take you under the sea. So the turtle never found out Taro's true intentions.
And then the camera like pans back to his little fishing house, and it's just full of like turtle shells and like turtle meat and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, here's one other random thing before we get into this modern urban legend version. Apparently Taro, the first name, was not added or given to Urashima until I think around the Muromachi period. He used to go by the name of, or in the stories he was called like Urashima-ko or Urashima no Ko. There's a couple different ways to say it, but there was no Taro in the early versions. So yeah, he became Taro.
I don't know if the Taro name is that old. Like there's not that many people named Taro thousands of years ago in Japan, right?
Yeah, there's not. And again, we did a whole thing about names, like first names, last names, and how first names didn't really come into, and people didn't have last names, and this whole thing. It's a whole super complicated thing. But the Taro name, I don't think really came into common use until quite a bit later. And then this version didn't adopt it until the Muromachi period, is what I read. But anyway, when I was looking up these different versions, I came across one version on YouTube, which was this Toshi Densetsu urban legend version. And it's pretty funny, pretty weird. Pretty out there, and I would argue it still doesn't quite make sense, but they tried their best to have it make sense in some way. So here goes. So Urashima Taro is this young playboy guy, probably I don't know, around 20 years old, let's say, and he's out in the town in the red light district, probably just having a good old time, walking around, probably flaunting some money, and he sees some young guys picking on a woman, and the
Who
woman.
smells like a turtle.
The story doesn't say that, but
Or smells like an oarfish.
yeah, but her name ends up being Okame. All right, so kame means turtle in Japanese, and like Edo period, o something was a common naming like formula for a woman, like omatsu or oiwa or o something. That a lot of women had o something as their name back in those days. So her name was Okame, which is o turtle. So
I hope her
he
family name was Kamida.
no, Kameda Okame. So he, well, actually, for reasons that I will reveal later on, Urashima Taro probably could not have been 20 years old. He probably had to be a little bit older. But anyway, he helps out this woman, and the woman says, like, come with me to this place called Ryugujo. And the
And
woman
he thought
takes him.
he thought it was a pachinko parlor or something at the time.
No, well, he hops on her back, piggyback, and then she takes.
Is it actually in the story he writes it?
No, it's not. It's not. But it should
Giddy
be.
up!
Yeah, let's go to Ryugujo. And then he makes the coconut sound thing like from Monty Python.
Because that's the sound turtles make.
Yeah, that's the sound turtles. Yeah. So anyway, so she takes him to this place called Ryugujo, which is basically this like establishment of the night. There's sake and naked women and partying, and he. Okay, so yeah, so she ends up giving him, instead of sake and all these things, she ends up giving him opium.
Ooh.
Ooh. And then so he ends up getting addicted to the opium. The verb used in the Japanese version of the story is su. So I guess he smokes it, because su means inhale, or I don't know if you can snort opium. Usually, back in those days, I think they were smoking it. So he
But
ends up getting.
Urashima Ko was snorting it.
He was just snorting entire flowers.
Yep.
Yeah. So he ends up getting addicted to the opium, and he spends 3 years, I guess, in this opium field stupor. But then eventually he tells Okame, the woman, like, I gotta go see my family. I gotta go. So then she gives him a box. Again, the box, right? What's in the box? What's in the box? We're going to find out what's in the box. Hang on. So she says, don't open the box. Here's the box, but you can always come back whenever you want or whatever. And so he leaves, he takes the box, but then he can't stop himself. He opens the box, and there's more opium in the box. So he opens the box, he can't resist. He does the opium, and then this last bit of opium ends up causing his hair to go white all of a sudden, and he ends up dying from the opium. But and this part of the story is very unclear, because it doesn't say if he gets home before this happens or he gets home and then he basically ODs on the opium. But he has a daughter, and the daughter finds him, and then she declares that she will get revenge on the person that did this to him. So what's actually going on here is the story reveals this, but nobody it's never stated how the daughter finds out about this, or Taro's daughter, but the narrator reveals this, that Okame was actually the daughter of a woman that Urashima Taro did something bad to. So she wanted to take revenge on Taro. So this whole thing was a plan orchestrated by her to get revenge. And then, like I said, at the end, the daughter of Taro declares that she's going to get revenge on the woman, but the story never says that Taro actually told her that this box was from Okame, the woman that gave him the box. So I don't know how the daughter finds out about this and how she's going to get revenge. And then the story ends there.
So the moral of that story is when you get revenge, don't leave witnesses.
Yeah. It, again, like it tries to give it this kind of like ooh scary thing, and it's actually this real world story about, I guess, not doing heroin.
What a weird way to get revenge. I'll get him addicted on this drug for years, and then maybe he'll OD on himself when he asks to leave.
Yeah.
The plan kind of hinged on him leaving, right? Or else he doesn't get the box.
I guess, yeah, or maybe she'd just get fed up one day and then just say like, here's some really good stuff and make him OD. But then he might die wherever she has him, and then she might get in trouble. So it still doesn't
Couldn't she
quite.
just poison it? Like it's already an illegal substance anyway.
Yeah, that definitely could have done that. Well, I don't know why 3 years. I mean, I guess she's really getting off on like just this prolonged suffering that she's making him endure.
That's a really expensive revenge.
It is, yeah. Because where's she get? Yeah, that's true. Where's she getting all this opium from?
Because you can only assume she's giving it to him for free.
Yeah. I mean, the story not particularly detailed, unless she's making him like work for it, and he's totally hooked on it. So she's the dealer. Maybe that's how she's making the money off of him. She's selling it to him, and at the same time making him suffer. So she's getting double revenge, I guess. I
don't know. I hope the daughter gets her.
Yeah,
but in a less circuitous way.
It's like, I'm going to get you addicted to chocolate, and it's going to take a really long time, but your nose is eventually going to start bleeding.
and somehow that will kill you.
Yeah. Let's call back to our does eating too much chocolate make your nose bleed episode. Go back and listen to that. So yeah. I mean, creative interpretation here, but again, I'm not particularly satisfied with anything here. So yeah, I can't say much more because the story doesn't have a moral. And
it does. Don't trust suspicious turtles.
Yes. Yeah. If a random woman comes out of nowhere and says, "Come back with me to my palace," do not trust her. She's a turtle.
Yeah, honestly, if any woman just walks out of the sea and says, "Come with me," just run away.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
Doesn't even need to be a woman. If something just walks out of the sea and tells you to follow it, run away.
Yes. Just don't trust these people. Like, if it's too good to be true, if somebody says, "I'm going to take you to my palace and we're going to have a good time," it's like, what? All right. You know what? I appreciate the offer. I'm going to pass, but
I'm going to go home and get my backpack and then just don't come back.
Yeah. Maybe you don't want to get him angry. So it's like, look, I gotta go get, like some underwear. So, it's like, just hang on. I'll be right back.
Hold on. My wife's a crane. Let me go check with her first.
Oh man, maybe Urashima Taro was already married, and it was a crane versus a turtle, and they were all just they're like, look, he screwed us both over, so let's get revenge. And then he ends up dying because he screwed over these both like animals that turned into women secretly. So there you go.
Japan is just full of animal women.
Yeah.
They outnumber the human women.
Yeah. I think that's the whole declining birth rate thing, right? It's like, there's less humans being born, but there's more like half animal, half women, half people hybrids being born. So the statistics haven't, taken that into account.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe in a future episode we could talk about it. But in most of these stories where there is like the woman hiding as an animal hiding as a woman, they usually have kids before the story ends.
There's a lot of them where they do end up having kids. Yeah, that's a good point. And they're not getting counted in the census, right? So when the census guy comes, he's like, "How many people in your house? All right, how many people are half animals? Okay, so that's 2 minus 1. Okay, so there's only one person in your household. Gotcha. All right, next house."
Discrimination against the animal-blooded.
Yes, exactly. So maybe that's what's going on in Japan. It's not overwork and stress and not enough pay. It's actually just that there's a lot of half animals in Japan. Yep, that's it. So
And they
yeah,
have
that's
magic
it.
powers for some reason. Normal
Yeah,
animals don't, but half animal, half humans, you just get magic.
exactly. So yeah, the point of the story is just don't trust women out of the ocean and turtles. It may sound good, but eventually they're going to give you some crazy box that you're going to forget that you shouldn't open, and then you're going to open it. Um, one other thing, it's like what? So if Urashima was gone for 300 or 700 years, I mean, and then he turns into an old man, like to me that calculation doesn't like add up either. So because it's like, did he turn into a 300-year-old corpse or did he just turn into some standard old man?
I think
um
he's usually still alive. I mean, some versions he dies, but
yeah, in
he
some
doesn't die
versions, yeah,
immediately.
yeah. In some
So
versions he's alive still, he's just an old
I feel
man.
like he's just like an 80-year-old man who skipped ahead 700 years.
Yeah, so it's so confusing, so confusing.
Maybe
um
there's like a bigger box of age that she couldn't fit in the smaller box.
yeah, she wanted to give him the other one, but she's like, nah, he's gonna have to like strap this on his back. He's gonna say no to this one, so I'm just gonna give him
Why
a
even
small one.
give him that at all? Just throw it away.
Yeah, exactly. This is the whole friggin' thing. Like, ah, the story. Like, I can only assume that whoever came up with this thing, I mean, did it for some reason. But obviously, if that is true, then whatever the reason was, it's gone. Like, it's absolutely gone because I don't know what this is. I don't know like what the point is. And
It probably went through like 1,000 revisions, and each revision had a moral, and then just over time it became "Don't trust turtles."
yeah, yeah,
In the
yeah,
original story, there wasn't even a turtle.
yeah. Yeah, it's very possible. It could have just been the random woman or something. I just do not know. I do not know. So anyway, I'm sorry if that wasn't satisfactory, but I hope at least you got a laugh out of some nonsense we said. But that is Urashima Taro in a turtle shell, not a nutshell, in a suspicious turtle shell.
Don't open
So
it.
do not look in the box. Just oh my goodness, do not look in the box. That's it. Yeah. So if there's anything else you want us to look into, send us an email over to ichimon@japankyo.com. Yeah, Japanese fairy tales are super interesting, but they're also just very like from a modern storytelling kind of point of view. Often they are very unsatisfactory. There's no 3-story arc structure. Uh, but yeah. Anyway, anything else you want to add, Ryan?
uh, how did tortoises figure in? Can you trust them?
Uh, well, so the tortoise would be the land version, right, of
Yeah,
this shelled animal. So it would not take you into the ocean.
he
So
like takes you into the forest or something.
it takes you into the forest, yeah, and then turns. I don't know. Then you end up eating
Maybe
a
you get
fox.
younger.
Oh my goodness! Opens the box and turns into a baby. Well, guess that's better than an old man. So yeah,
Nah, because then he
tortoise.
eats you. Tortoises eat babies. Everyone knows
Oh
that.
my goodness! It's always back to the animal is the bad one in the story. So do not
The
trust me there.
animal's usually the bad one in the stories.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, all right. Well, leave it at that. But thanks for listening, and see you next time. Don't trust turtles.
See you next time. Goodbye.